Okay, here we go.
Am I on? Okay, there we are. Here we go. We say each week that we're an intentionally welcoming congregation to people of all races and creeds and sexual orientations and gender identities. I think we are. We're also religiously liberal, which means that we are humble about what we assume to be true, and we're pretty committed to being humble about what we assume to be true. Although we're a little bold and arrogant about being humble about what we assume to be true. We're a community concerned about social issues, and we're reasonably active in walking that walk. We could certainly be better. We normally highlight a few of the events headed our way, and I'm going to do that, but I'm going to certainly skip for a run through the summary of what anyone who's relatively new might expect for this hour to look like. Okay, here we go. You've probably, as a new person, arrived on time or close and then watched everybody pour in about now. If you're new, you'll feel a little bit uncomfortable, but of course, why wouldn't you? You're new. Give yourself a break, for goodness sakes, right? How else could you feel in a new spot and a new day? And then we'll light a chalice, or Jace will light a chalice, and we'll save some poetic words, and then I'll summarize the theme of the service after a bunch of announcements, and then if it were not for that persistent COVID, we would have a really sort of generous and warm greeting of one's neighbor, but instead we're going to do a sanitary CDC-approved nod to the people who are near you as if you acknowledge their existence. Then we will mumble through the singing of a song. Next week, the choir is going to sing from outside the doors in at us, which is great. So Severin's back, and we're starting to cook that way. Then we're going to have a children's moment that ranges from boring to okay to hilarious to sweet, and then we will sing the kids out to religious education. And if it were not for that persistent COVID virus, you would have been invited to stand and sing a hymn, but pay attention, there's a clue if you're new, because you're gonna get a sense with the hymn. You'll either say, wow, where is Jesus and God in this hymn? Or you'll say, wow, nice not to have to read ahead to see what I disagree with. This singing thing happens a few times during the service. You will share joys and concerns, and if you're new, people are going to spill their guts about this or that, then you won't know them, but how else could you feel but a little uncomfortable about that, right? And then we'll have some sort of meditative music that'll lead into a certain amount of silence, and that's sometimes the best part of the service. If you don't like the prayer into silence, into music thing, then you might not fit, but don't worry. You're here for just an hour of your life. You've wasted more of that on reality TV and MSNBC this week, searching for your car keys, for God's sakes. And then in the last 2 days, we'll have a collection following the sermon. You'll likely think that's pretty interesting, or what kind of heretical place am I sitting in? And then we'll say something funny. I like to call it the offertory humor. If you're a guest, we sort of use that as a moment of extortion. And then, but if you're new, you don't have to make a donation. It's part of our culture. You're new. You shouldn't have to donate. And then Kelly will, during this journey, provide us with some pretty interesting visuals. And if you're one of the many new people who come on any given week, your job is to simply pay attention to how you feel. If you find yourself wondering where the Moses or the altar call comes in, then maybe you're not in the right spot, but hey, that's why they make chocolate and rainbow sherbet, right? So, don't get up because the postlude is often really good as well. So, happy Labor Day to everybody. Tomorrow starts Rosh Hashanah, which is the Jewish New Year, and also a time to start getting right with your conscience and or your God. Next week, we'll have the water communion service, which if you bring a little bit of water from home, we add it to a bowl. We use that to sort of dedicate our kids. So if you think about that, we're also going to have a service. Ruth Stewart has brought to us the rehab center for predatory birds. So we're going to have some predatory birds on the patio next week after, and maybe they're going to do some demonstrations. So it's probably good that we don't have food back yet. This is the last Tuesday of this week, so just a couple days from now is the last day to sign up for a new Chalice group. So is Vivian here? Vivian is not here. But anyway, that's that. And we're going to have this book, Nice Racism, which is Robin DiAngelo's latest book, and we're going to start reading that in about mid-October. The Deeper Dive group is reading it now. And in the last Saturday of September and the first Saturday of October, I'm going to do an adult ed program on Zealot. So we've got sort of a break in our adult Saturday programs, other than we're trying to pull together a planned giving workshop on the 18th. Let's see. The COVID surge has facilitated us wearing masks inside, right? Other than me when I'm talking. And make sure it's over your nose and mouth, and we're trying to sort of keep it from being more restrictive. If you don't want to wear a mask, you can sit outside. So there we go. Okay, we have membership coming up. If you're new and you're interested in becoming a member, we have a little class on the 19th. That's coming up right after church. And that same Sunday afternoon, the teens are going to start off their coming of age program with Kim, and we're all going to go to see the Van Gogh exhibit. Some of us have seen it already. Okay. That's enough of all of that. I'm going to invite Dale to come forward and share our chalice words, and Jace is going to set our place on fire. All right.
Today's chalice lighting is entitled the Declaration of Fellowship. Our chalice lighting today is a frequently uttered declaration from UU churches all around the country. We unite to affirm that love is the spirit of this church and service is its mission. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, and to give service to humanity.
Thanks, Joe. This sermon is kind of, I don't know, it's as revolutionary as I get, I suppose you'd say. For anyone who was here at the de Benneville barbecue thing we had a few weeks ago on a Saturday, for those who were in that little adult ed program, we did this wonderful sort of exercise on where you're from. And Soren sort of took over the end of it a little bit and talked about being from East Berlin and talking about growing up with the communist ideals of an equal society, and sort of was kind of tearful, a very sweet moment actually, of how hard it is to be in America in a capitalist country. And that sort of led me to think about that and led me to pull together this service. So this service is about greed, and it's about this very concept of, you'll hear this refrain throughout it, it's called agreed upon which we have agreed. And I'm sort of presenting that America has this odd capacity for greed that we probably don't look at directly for its levels of insanity. Before we start, and before I forget, Jim Michaels on Wednesday is going to be 98 years old. Jim is nearly a founder of this church, came a little late to be a founder, but was a past president and a very good friend of mine, so congratulations to Jim. There we are. Okay. Let's sing a hymn. 121 if you want. We don't have the books, so okay.
We'll build a land where we bind up the broken. We'll build a land where the captives go free, where the oil of gladness dissolves all mourning. Oh, we'll build a promised land that can be. Come build a land where sisters and brothers, anointed by God, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like a water, and peace like an ever-flowing stream. We'll build a land where we bring the good tidings to all the afflicted and all those who mourn. Give them garlands instead of ashes. We'll build a land where peace is born. Come build a land where sisters and brothers, anointed by God, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like a water, and peace like an ever-flowing stream.
I'd like to invite our kids down from the rug, maybe spread themselves out so we're not too close. Come on. I see you out there. Come on. Wow, the power of youthful indifference is strong today. I feel the force. So at church, I did this a couple years ago. Probably nobody here remember this, but I think it's an important lesson. So at church, we always ask ourselves to behave ourselves, right? That's sort of one of the things we learn to do here. And we try to manage our anger, which is one of the more destructive forces we can have in our life. So I want you to think about getting angry, and I want you to think about when you feel angry. It's almost like, when you see the engine light in the car when things aren't going well, you see that check engine light, and that's like the ultimate oh no problem. So anger can be like an early warning system that if something is important, and there can be sort of good angers and there can be bad angers, right, Kim? Yeah, there you go. All right. So I want you to think about a yellow flashing light up there. That's like what you'd see if you want to look up there. You see, like that's anger is like a sort of a bit of a warning sign. Okay. I want you to imagine getting angry. So I want you to feel a little bit of anger. Think about something that makes you angry. Whatever it is, doesn't matter. I'm not going to ask you what it is. That can be, it's up to you. And then I want you to think about that. So when you got it, you can all participate in it too. I can think of a few people that make me angry. None of you. Let's take a couple deep breaths. Deep breaths are a good, like a biological get to the car, fix your check engine light system. Just some deep breath. Okay. So, there's good anger, there's bad anger. It's sometimes hard to figure out it. But Jesus is sort of famous for being peaceful to some degree, but he's also has these moments of anger, right? He's a human being too, so he has these moments of anger. And Dale's going to give us a little cleaning of the temple talk.
Okay. This brings you back my divinity school days.
There you go.
A little bit of divinity school lecture here.
Yeah.
Some Christians think the cleansing of the temple is the only account of Jesus using physical force in any of the Gospels. One part of the Christian church is Eastern Orthodox, and they don't buy that. They don't think that, they don't believe in that. Now, the narrative actually in the New Testament comes at the end of what's called the Synoptic Gospels. And for those of you taking mental notes, or those who are at home taking notes, if you want to look this up, it occurs at the book of Mark, chapter 11, sections 15 to 19, and 27 to 33. Again, it is in the book of Matthew, book of 21, sections 12 to 17, and Luke. There's some in Luke as well. And so some scholars believe that these actually refer to two separate incidents, that they got kind of put together for purposes unknown.
Tell us what happens in the temple.
Okay. So in this gospel, now you have the history lesson. Now you have the history lesson, right? In this gospel, Jesus and his disciples traveled to Jerusalem for the Jewish observance of Passover. Now, what he does is he goes to the great temple in Jerusalem, and
There's
it was
a picture of it up here.
Yeah.
The temple in a second.
Yeah.
So there's Jesus getting in trouble, as he's prone to do.
Yes.
And there's the temple. So he did this in that open space in the front there, like inside the walls, but before you get to the big temple part.
So what happens is that people would give offerings to the priests at the temple. That was a common accepted thing. And people would go and buy things to give to the temple. If you're very wealthy, it might be an animal. If you were very poor, maybe you could afford a dove. You know?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And the idea of using Roman coinage to give as an offering was considered a big no-no. You just didn't do that. So they would have money changers. People sit at tables. You'd give a Roman coin and exchange it for acceptable currency that the temple could take. So Jesus was not up with this. He did not think that was a good thing at all.
Didn't like it at all.
No. So basically, he goes to the temple with the disciples, and he turns over all the money tables, and he kicks over the chairs of people selling doves.
He has a temper tantrum.
He does, yeah. And so he says, you've turned the house of God into a den of thieves.
He knocks over things and just
Right.
really makes a big scene.
Huge.
It's probably what gets him killed.
Huge scene, yeah.
Yeah, huge scene.
Which not endear him to the temple
Powers that be.
authorities.
That's right, exactly. So, in our lives, we have to think about where we should be angry, because you can be too passive, right? You can be too passive about racism. You can be too passive about injustice, bullying kids at school. You can just sit back and let that all happen. But sometimes when you're angry, you have to honor that and do something about it. Usually not physical, but it's important to remember that anger is a good warning sign for injustice too, right? When you get angry at, like, you know, anything. Yeah, Texas. Yes, right. Abortion rights being taken away. All these things. The craziness of the modern moment is
The voting
enough.
the voting laws
The voting
in red
laws.
states.
There's
yes.
lots to be angry about. So anyway, so what I'm asking you guys to do is to think when you get angry, is this a just anger? Or is this something that I am just angry about for selfish or personal reasons? And try to sort that out and think about what you can do to be constructive. Because dealing with your anger is an important part of being a healthy, moral person. How about that? There we go. Yeah, we're going to mumble out our kids with our Mumbling Out Our Kids song. Mumbling out the children. You guys can...
Believe. Yeah. Go with wisdom, go with them. Go to meet a brand new day. Learn to meet the light within you as we tend you on your way. Sorry, I did the wrong one.
Well, you're new. We'll work on that in our meeting.
Yeah, we'll work on that.
Yeah, we're going to work on that. That's right. Gabby cut his pay. Greg, where is... So, I want to invite anyone who wishes to come down. I'm going to invite Leanne to come up and light our candles, if she would, and to just share anything that you want to share? I'll run the microphones around. Since my prayers to the one true God seem to often go unresponded to, I will address this petition, this prayer, not surely what you want to call it, to the next powerful singularity I can think of, the great secular, equally hard to reach 1%ers that sit at the top of our economic food chain. Being a Unitarian, I suppose it is instinctive to address the one. Being Universalist, I'm happy to share my awareness of their power with the rest of the 99% of us. Truthfully, I think it's long overdue that the 1% have been acknowledged for the impact they really have on elections and civil life in general. I've long known that the relative difference between you and the average person is pretty amazing. I hope it feels good. 1%ers, after all, control 90% of all the nation's wealth. Think about that. That's pretty amazing. And I mean that in the way that a hurricane is. I wonder if way up in the offices and penthouses, if they ever hearken back to a time that long ago when those camped out underneath the high castle walls or skyscraper walls were admirers felt in need of protection. I hope for them it is a balm and a comfort to look down and imagine us as peasants ready to defend the castle walls. I'd like to offer a collective prayer that we as a people start to challenge the lack of ceiling to wages and assets we have in this country. I pray that the rest of we Americans challenge the presumption that the real talented and innovative among us are primarily motivated by the capacity to make more and more millions to keep them engaged in their innovative acts. I challenge that corporations have been granted the same free speech rights as citizens. I protest that money should be equated with the freedom and power of speech. I reject the presumed liberty that people and institutions be able to accumulate wealth in an unregulated way. And I challenge that we can pollute and add carbon to the atmosphere without figuring the consequences of that into the economic equation, into the cost of things. And I propose and I invite us to take to prayer the idea that we accept the vast inequality that exists as a primary threat to democracy, the natural order, the relationship between the races, as if that existed, and the general well-being of humanity and the planet. Not long ago, the wealthy were able to sell themselves as engines of our economy. Now, more and more, we see them as egotistical drunks behind the wheel. By the power invested in this pulpit by Amos, Isaiah, the trickster coyote, by the power invested in the robes I often wear, Mother Jones, Martin Luther King, and Dorothy Day, I invite you to take that thought of inequality to prayer.
It's a mystery to me. We have agreed with which we have agreed, and you think you have to want more than you need. Until you have it all, you won't be free. Society, you're a crazy breed. Hope you're not lonely without me. When you want more than you have, you think you need. And when you society. You're crazy brave. I hope you're not lonely without me. Society, you're crazy indeed. I hope you're not lonely without me.
I built this sermon off Soren's statements and also that phrase, agreed upon which we have agreed. I love quippy phrases. I love bumper sticker sized kernels of wisdom that are poignant and funny or ironic. They just sort of turn me on. I like the ones particularly that take a second to catch up, might have a little ironic bite to them. I heard a frustrated basketball coach say once after a brutal loss to a far better team, he said, "Just because my team wasn't tall enough doesn't mean we also weren't slow." Another favorite short salutation I get from my dad is, it's the classic sort of, he greets you, he says, "It's been a pleasure, all yours." I'd like to offer so, now I've thrown off my thing here. Hold on. Give me a minute. Sorry. There we go. Goodness gracious. So, anyway, I think that these things have kind of an intoxicating simplicity to them. They have a power over me. I can sort of think about them too much, kind of in a way that I think about chocolate too much. And in a similar way, this agreed upon which we have agreed kind of struck me. I wish it were my creation, but it's Jerry Hannon who's the singer of that song we heard as the meditation piece. When I was in training for the ministry, I worked a year with two separate organizations that did a lot of this kind of stuff. They were United for a Fair Economy, which was basically designed to get wealthy people to advocate for higher taxes on wealthy people. Kind of a dog, man bites dog story. And then I worked for the National Interfaith Committee for Worker Justice in Chicago, and in those, they're always coming up with gimmicky titles, right? One of the great ones was, "In the economic race to the bottom, everyone's a winner." When states compete or countries to lower their wages. The other one is also, we need an economy built on profits, P-H-E-T-S, not profits. I haven't coined any of these phrases, but I like them anyway, and I wish I had created them. I also wish that I'm lazy, and I wish that discovering a truth immediately implemented it in society, right? Wouldn't that be great? Wouldn't that be sort of one of the great creations? If something sort of turned out to be true, it just worked, and everyone sort of adopted it. Like, we know pretty definitively in the science of psychology and child development that children need love as well as they need safety and structure, and they need nutritious food. And we as a society don't always prioritize that, or for that matter, do the most capable people of delivering that have kids. It saddens me also that we pretty much definitively know now that one's sexuality is not as much a choice as it was sort of pitched to be, as much as anyone identifies with being bisexual or lesbian or gay or transgender just feels like who they are. It's not really a choice. My lazy Steve side and my rational but complacent side is pretty big. And it just hates that even though we know that, like with DNA testing, that basically there is no significant difference between people of different skin colors that we've identified as calling races, doesn't end racism. Sort of frustrates me because I don't really want to work that hard to make these changes happen. I get sad when reason and truth don't rule. So I want you to join me in the idea that this country, sort of the deep us, is built on a sort of weird acceptance of greed that we don't look at enough. We greedily stole native lands and called it God's will. We greedily stole people from their lives in Africa to work out our new land and convinced ourselves, white people particularly, convinced others that they weren't really people. Challenge in the public way that all the talk of freedom and all men are created equal. I want the idea of like agreed upon which we have agreed to sort of just sit there and uncomfortably like challenge us. Just in the same way that like, you know, it was hard to sort of hear all men are created equal and then not have, right, women's votes and obviously African Americans having any rights at all. So no petitions today, no request to call your congressman. I want you to ask yourself if America does not have an unnecessary loyalty to greed, if there is not a greed upon which we have unwittingly accepted. No wonder I never made it as an organizer. I never asked anybody to do anything hard. We made this weird, philosophically untenable, unsound combination of religious values we got from our Christian roots with this idea of economic freedom, and to some degree it works. We're born of a Christian faith that calls us to compassion and to call us to be our brother's keeper, our sister's keeper, one would presume too. And on the other hand, we have this commitment to not getting it all in the way of how much accumulated assets get in the hands of some people. Part of why I think we don't worry about creating some guidelines for these two conflicting values is because we assumed that we would, as religious people at the start of the country, check that nasty side of ourselves, or maybe we just didn't even want to. And the assumptions never really worked. Just think about a few facts that are sort of sit there and true, and just listen to them as just straightforward things. When we tax the income from people who actually work, we tax it at somewhere, 25 to 30%, somewhere in there. When we tax the income investments people have, that's somewhere hovering around 15 to 20%. Who needs that money more? The people with investments or the people who work? When tech corporations like Verizon, who have enough money to seemingly purchase every television slot ad not purchased by an insurance company or a drug company, and then hardly pay any taxes because all those advertisements are business expenses, don't we clearly have agreed upon which we have agreed and then ignored? This combination of sort of frontier mentality, a desire to get rich, and a belief that we are in biblical terms sort of above it all, a city on a hill, the new Zion, has left us with this sort of incapacity to see what's absurd. We're trapped in a commitment to economic freedom. I think we should begin to think of the way we accept inequality as a parallel to the way so many conspiracy theorists evaluate the risk and reward of being vaccinated as just sort of warped. I think we should, in an effort to be honest, have to accept that we as a culture very long ago cut a bargain with our own moral selves that is in long overdue need of some revision. It's Labor Day. It's a classic day to think about working people. It was weekend built for working people. And ask ourselves if we're not complicit with the idea that we have agreed upon which we have agreed. I'd like it to be a meme for change, that very phrase, in the way that Mickey Mouse ears or the smiley face means happy times, or Mickey Mouse ears means fun family entertainment. I'd like to think that this agreed upon which we have agreed could come to bug us in the exact same way that all men are created equal just tormented us as it was written there in the Constitution. Think about what happened in 2008 and 2009. We had a housing crisis that no one went to jail for, that basically crushed the economy and cost a lot of people their well-being and all their retirement savings. No one went to jail. Maybe one person went to jail. A small-time Asian man went to jail for getting caught in a fraud. The last time we had economic equality at the level that we have it now was about 1950-15, and it was sort of the Vanderbilt's kind of Gilded Age kind of time. Being interesting to have conversations with your friends about this. We as Americans have the right and liberty to earn as much as $10 million a year. Perhaps in a way that most Americans seem in favor of the idea that the right to bear arms in an organized militia does not warrant the right to go to a gun show and buy an AR-15. Maybe we should constrain economic liberty a little bit too. Sometimes you just need to hear how crazy we are. The Koch brothers, and this is dated, I just sort of found it amazing. We let the Koch brothers donate more to political campaigns in the 2012 election than the gross state product of the following 37 states: Maryland, Indiana, Minnesota, Tennessee, Arizona, Wisconsin, Colorado, Missouri, Louisiana, Connecticut, Alabama, Oregon, South Carolina, Kentucky, Oklahoma, Iowa, Nevada, Kansas, Utah, Arkansas, the District of Columbia, Mississippi, Nebraska, New Mexico, Hawaii, Delaware, West Virginia, New Hampshire, I said Delaware already, Maine, Alaska, Rhode Island, South Dakota, Montana, and Vermont. They donated more to the political campaigns in 2020 than the gross state product of those states. The idea that two wealthy brothers, one dead now, who make matters worse, earn their money largely from mining coal, the worst of all the carbon-emitting energy sources. But more importantly, the fact that any two people can have that kind of persuasion in an election is insane. Is it not? It's insane. At Walgreens, just in this last and more updated thing, at Walgreens, the top 5 executives averaged 11 million last year. 9% hike over the previous year. Thanks to these same execs, no retail giant in the United States has given its workers less of a COVID hazard pay bump than Walgreens did. Pacina, their CEO, made $17 million. That's 524 times the typical pay for a Walgreens employee, which makes about $34,000 a year. Brookings analysts Kinder and Statler found similar top dog sort of greed, most notably at Amazon and Walmart. Amazon CEO Jeff Bezos, and then the collective heirs to the Walmart fortune, have grown $216 billion richer since March of, a year and a half ago. That is 35 times the total amount of hazard pay given to more than 2.5 million Amazon and Walmart workers. 35 times that. Just sit with that for a minute. Pull away the commitment to freedom and liberty and the sort of like constitutional rights we have. It's crazy. The idea that the kind of influence needs to be protected by Supreme Court laws protecting free speech is equal to the craziness of gun laws. I think we're going to figure this out eventually. I think we're eventually going to do something about this. Most Americans think it's a little bit nuts. I don't think it'll be very soon when we figure this out. I don't expect us bringing an end to some of the ridiculous inequalities. I don't expect it to be a crazy age of Aquarius breaking out. But I think this will begin to be challenged, and I encourage us as collective people to be a part of that. It has to. It's the same level of insanity that like racism is. And I think the more we expose ourselves to sort of where we're bought into what things that don't make any sense, the better off we are. Amen. Dale's going to loosen us up with some humor.
Well, this is a story of parents of a Jewish kid in elementary school who was really struggling in math, and they were really just getting desperate, trying to think of, and the kid was in public school. And so the parents said, oh, we heard there's a Catholic school that really, really has a rigorous program. I think this could help my daughter. So they put her in the school, and her grades in math improved immediately. And so the parents said, well, why do you think you've done so much better at St. Anthony's, the parents? Well, the girl said, when I saw that guy nailed up there to that plus sign, I figured they took math pretty seriously.
Here we go. Give generously.
Give generously. I think in the spirit, our affirmation of gratitude is particularly apropos for what Steve was talking about today.
Right up there.
So, yes, let us
They're going to join us.
join us in speaking these words. Let us be grateful when we're able to give, for many do not have that privilege. Let us be grateful for all those who share their gifts, for we are enriched by their giving. And let us also be grateful for our needs, so that we may experience the generosity of others.
All right. Go. Closing words?
Closing words.
Okay.
This church is dedicated to the proposition that behind all our differences, beneath all our diversity, there is a unity that makes us one and binds us forever together in spite of time and death and the space between the stars. We pause in silent witness to that unity.
May the blessing of love be upon you. May love's peace abide with you. May love's presence illuminate your heart now and forevermore. So be it. See if you can join me in this. Amen. Shalom. Salam. Namaste. And blessed be. And now our service truly begins.
Please welcome Tom Moose. We did some recording a couple of years ago, and this is one of those tunes from that recording. Wow. That's Severin's tune, by the way. That's Severin's tune.
We're all done.
That was good, yeah, thanks. Yeah, that's a strong.